Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Femme Force Podcast. My name is Rachael Taskman, and I am your host. And today we're going to have a really great conversation with Jennylynde. She's a former nurse turned leadership coach, and she specializes in sustainable leadership and team dynamics, which right now in 2026 is something that we really need to see, given everything that's going on in the corporate worlds, in the tech worlds, and just in the world in general. So, we're going to be talking about those leadership gaps, emotional resilience, and just building better systems for leaders because, like we talk about, you become a leader, then what? So, we're going to talk about all that today. So, Jenny Lynn, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for having me. I am excited about our conversation today. We will be fast friends, I'm sure.
100%. So, describe what your work is today. We're going to go into how you were a nurse, into leadership, but what is it that you do day to day?
Yeah. So nowadays, my days are usually spent talking with leaders, some in healthcare, some in lots of other industries. Actually, I've experienced a lot of mostly women interested in that support in their leadership. So one-on-one trainings is how I spend the bulk of my day. I do have a 6 module course for
Oh,
small groups of leaders who want to get in alignment with each other. So that's the other part that comes up randomly throughout the days or weeks. But my focus is more one-on-one coaching right now. So really helping folks figure out what their rocks in their shoe are and how we get them where they want to go in their leadership journey.
I love that. And you started out as nursing, as I said, and the, you know, nurses rule the hospital. So I think there's a lot of leadership that people don't really understand in being in nursing, first off, just
Mm.
because the surgeons and the doctors do their thing, but then the nurses are really there for like all long-term care and like the acute things. But what led you from nursing into leadership coaching?
Mm. I believed as a nurse that I was still there to serve. I started out as a nursing assistant, right, in my youngest
Yeah.
years and absolutely loved the hands-on care and the effects that you get to have, and you see immediately as a nursing assistant that you've made that positive impact on somebody's life.
Yeah.
And then as you move into nursing, you're still having at the bedside that immediate effect on somebody's life. And you're helping supervise those other teams. So you're helping supervise the nursing assistant teams, and lots of other frontline workers come to the nurse as kind of the guide of that group. So heading into leadership was a really natural transition for me. And I continued to want to lead in that way of trying to have the biggest impact and the best impact I could have on the client, patient population.
Yeah.
And then kind of coming full circle back to coaching, right? Was I took all those years of leadership experience and realized that I can support other leaders with things that they're not getting through the coaching side of things. So it was kind of a full circle moment to be able to come back to leveraging that experience to helping the best possible thing happen for our clients, wherever our clients are.
No, but that's amazing because nursing, you're dealing with life and death and like literally life in your hands and trying to keep people alive and comfort their families and do so many things at such a different, higher emotional level. So I'm sure when you hear a lot of these corporate problems, you're like, this isn't that's not as big of a deal as you're making it. Like that deck is not gonna. You're not curing cancer unless it's a duck about curing cancer. You're not curing cancer with that. So, like, the rush and the anxiety that you must see, and especially in leaders of these really big companies and even small companies where they're taking it all in, must be like a different perspective.
It's funny you say that. I have said that to a couple clients.
This deck won't
You know,
change the world. It's not.
right? Respectfully, we could change the world for the people involved, but it isn't life or death. So
Yeah.
let's take a moment. We're going to take our pause and really think about this instead of just react, right? We're not in the pit, right? The ER shows or things like that. That's not where we're at.
Yeah.
As leaders, we have that luxury and privilege of taking a little time and being a little more thoughtful. So, yes, I have, in fact, encouraged a couple clients a couple times to take a deep breath and step back and
Gonna
take
be
your
okay.
powerful pause and think about it for a minute, let your brain catch up, and then your response is going to be that much more regulated and much more better received by whoever you're giving it to, right?
I love that. And just from learning that and then going into leadership coaching, but especially during your nursing time, when did you learn or what kind of triggered you to start thinking about how leadership needs to be done differently?
Ooh. Oh, unfortunately, having not great leaders, as well as having some great leaders,
Yeah.
right? I've had some incredible mentors in my career and women who just embodied all the things that I wanted to be and showing the way that they could lead a team in a really powerful and positive way and wanting to model myself after that. And then having some leaders who weren't so ideal and having to figure out how to manage up and how to accomplish things with my peer group and my leadership team rather than the person we reported to, because that person was struggling to move things forward in the way that we saw they needed to move forward. Or, we know regulatorily in healthcare things need to happen, whatever it is, those pieces and parts that sometimes are not juggled as effectively from some leaders, and when you're experiencing that, downhill from that, you think, "Oh, this could be better. Maybe we could train our leaders better than this."
No, 1,000%. And we talked about it a little bit, but there's just such a gap in like leadership training and things like that because you get a promotion and then it's like, here's a head count, here's money, go, go. And if
Right.
someone ever asked me in the beginning of my career, like, what is your leadership style? I'm pretty sure I said something like open door policy. I have no idea. Like, what am I, or do I have options? Is anybody going to tell them to me? And then do I pick an
Yeah,
option? And like, but then I follow that. Like, no one's telling you how to do this. There's no middle management training.
right.
And
It's
it
like it's a
defines so
secret.
much. Yeah, it defines so much of your, like, your trajectory of your career, though.
It really does, and you're absolutely right. It is this we hear those buzzwords, right? "Well, I follow an open door policy." Well,
Mhm.
that's great, and of course, we wanna be available to our teams, and just because our door is open doesn't mean
Right.
that as a leader, somebody taught us to go out and watch them work, because really going and actually seeing what your employees do if you haven't done it before is a crucial part of being a good leader. You have to have some kind of clue of what they do, and being willing then to listen when they bring us feedback, right? An important part, I think, of any change management is where did that change come from? Because change from a frontline employee who knows that they have to go too far for their supply in their setting every day, repeatedly wasting time, is a lot more powerful of a change than us sitting in an office going, gosh, but we need to save some time, right? Like, let's listen to our employees, but we need to actually go and see. Or the open door policy thing that always just breaks my heart a little bit is then that leader who has to actually close their door because they have to get some work done,
Work
right? Like
done.
maybe
Yeah.
payroll, for instance.
The
We
admin.
all want to
It's
get
an
paid.
admin day. Yeah. It's an admin day.
Yeah. And so they close their door, and then all of a sudden it's this big secret. Like, what are they doing? Why do they close their door? Well, nobody talked to them. We didn't have that training on transparency, right? It's okay to close your door even if you have an open door policy. And we need to communicate that. We need to be clear about what our other duties are with our teams. Because again, even if they were your peers before and you got promoted up because you were really good at that last job, which is how a lot of promotions happen, right? That that piece of what else the leader does is still a mystery to everybody else that we got promoted above, right? And so if we aren't clear with, hey, this list of things that I have to do as a leader it's a lot. And have that
Right.
transparency of like, gosh, there's a lot of things that have to be done here to keep us in line so that you get paid. And I don't have, maybe I can't explain all of it to my entire team, but I can be a little more transparent, right, about what I spent my time doing.
Mhm.
And again, that's that piece of nobody tells you that. Nobody tells you what it is or isn't okay to share with your team. So people err on the side of caution, which means they don't share anything. And then their teams don't necessarily want to trust them as much anymore. So then they're not as successful as a leadership, right? Like it gets to be this snake eating its own tail kind of circle where we can break that, right? We can do something different. We can be better. Maybe we could train our leaders. I did have the
Exactly.
privilege of working with one very large health system that has a great way of doing that, and they really invest a lot in their leaders, and I got a little jaded, I think, because I thought everybody did it, and so now as I've
Oh,
entered into my own. Yeah, you're, like, shaking your head, "No, they don't."
nope.
'cause I've entered into my own coaching, right? And I've had clients come to me who work for large recognizable name companies, and I say, "Well, what did you get for your leadership training? Or what's the leadership culture in a workplace like that?" And it's crickets, right? No, sorry for the powerful pause on a podcast, but crickets, because there
Yeah.
isn't one. And I think, how did these companies get so large and so successful? And can they continue to grow if they aren't going to take a moment and outline some training or some standards for leaders that they can then grow into and grow upon, build upon in their roles, right? It just doesn't happen. And that's continues to surprise me, because again, I
No,
saw it
no,
done really
yeah,
well in one place
1,000%.
and thought, "Great." It's not the norm.
And I mean, it should be the norm though, because the whole point of having managers is so that your C-suite level isn't having to do all of these little things. And if it's not functioning in that kind of silo, then how else are you supposed to know? And then
Right.
corporate policies don't always cover all of this. Like, oh, you can't tell people this, or you can't. I mean, sometimes they do, and there's training, like privacy and all of that, and data breaches and blah, blah, blah. But there's
Mm,
nothing ever specific to like specific jobs or like specific with management. I mean, there can be company philosophies, but a
right.
philosophy is hard pressed from a training or rules or mandations.
And that piece of, what about all the unspoken stuff,
Mm.
right? It's great if you have written policies and I can take a written policy that you give me when I'm promoted and I can read it and I can implement it. What about the things that are just kind of presumed that this is how we are, or this is how we act, or this is the norm here, that's not been the norm anyplace else. It's very unique to us, but we don't talk about it. We don't write it down. So then that new leader comes in and doesn't do it. And then there's also that whole component of, gosh, are they really a good fit for this new role? Because they aren't even doing the thing. Well, did anybody tell them
Yeah.
about the thing?
The thing needs to be shared. The thing needs to be
Right.
shared. I mean, I think, and then you're just burning out from that because
Mm,
you're taking courses on your own or you're getting trainings on your own, but you're also trying to do your job and live your life and balance it all. And I feel like this is definitely probably a lot more heavy-handed for women who are normally
mm,
just juggling it all and doing all the things. So why do you
right.
think that women struggle with those kind of boundaries in leadership?
We are absolutely socialized to prioritize ourselves last. And so that's something that as we move into leadership roles, well, I happen to believe, I'm a big fan of therapy. I happen to think we should all have a
Yeah.
therapist and we should be working
Hell
through
yeah.
our history, right? And working on things as we go, because that's our therapy for that. And as we move forward in whatever space in our lives, I think starting to think about, where is the right place that I am the priority,
Mm.
right? Where is the boundary that's appropriate to keep me going well? Because having that understanding as a leader, that when I am functioning right at my best and supporting my team their best, and then they are functioning at their best, is how clients, and again, a lot of times it's patients, but not always. It's clients, it's grocery store clients, it's residential clients, it's children, depending on some of the leaders that have come through, my coaching programs, that could be anybody, right? How
Yeah.
our client gets the best possible care when our team is functioning the best. Our team functions the best when we as a leader are functioning the best. And you can't run on fumes with no boundaries and letting everything happen all the time and be your best. And I speak from experience. I've done that where I got myself into a situation, right? Because I,
Yeah.
I believe myself to be a servant leader. So I want to do whatever it takes for my team to succeed. And when you don't have boundaries set up, that can lead to some really unhealthy situations where you're working 16, 18 hours a day, or you're filling in for everything all the time, and you can't do that forever. And so when you can't do it anymore, either you have to do a lot of repair on
Backpedaling. Yeah.
trying to set those boundaries, or you have to leave a role, right? When you can't find your way out of a role, you end up leaving the role because you can't fix it anymore. And that's also, I mean, unfortunately, I think in the situation where I did it, that was the best thing I could do, right? Because I was too burnt out to fix the boundaries anymore and to get back to a healthy place in that role. I had to step away from it. So it was the best for my team, but it shouldn't feel like it, right? Again, because we're socialized to, prioritize everybody else first. I really wanted to be there for my team and support them in every way that I could. And having to recognize that I literally couldn't anymore was an uncomfortable truth. So I encourage people to like think about boundaries early on if they can. And if they're already well into their leadership career, it's never too late to start thinking about boundaries. But
No,
thinking
a
about
thousand percent.
what is that? How do you take the best care of yourself? Right? Even in those urgent situations. It's the
What are
airplane
the
air
early
mask, right?
Oh, 100%. What are the early signs of burnout? Like, before you get to the point where you're like, "I have to leave this position. This is not
Yeah.
going well."
Um, I I'm not a fan of should or shouldn't, but honestly, I can't find a better word for this. I was reflecting, thinking, "Oh, we're probably gonna talk about this, Rachel and I need to think about it." I don't think we should not like our job. When I was
Okay.
thinking back on early signs of burnout, when I started to really have that, "Oh, I had a couple days off, but I'm gonna have to go in," or, "Oh, this is the start of another really long week, and I don't want to do it." Right? So, starting to feel like I don't like my job and there's nothing there for me, I think is an early sign of burnout. So that emotional distancing, sometimes, uh, dis dismissal or lack of attention paid to metrics we need to hit to we've all got the standards we're trying to meet, and if we're not getting them, and again, we don't care, that's a sign that maybe we should step back and reevaluate where we're at. And I'm speaking to women on this one because I can't speak to how men approach some of those things and how they're feeling about it. Um, I think one of the things that helps women in leadership is that ability to access our emotions. And so relying on that piece of, oh, I'm getting a lot of really unpleasant emotions related to my work.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time for me to reconsider. Do I have enough boundaries? Am I taking enough time for me to keep myself in this role comfortably for the long term?
No, and that makes sense because you wanna try to prevent it before it gets to that extreme
Right.
level, of course. And so
Right.
when someone becomes a new leader, so someone who's, they've done a couple year, what, 3, 4 years at, a cushy corporate job, and they're like, "We're promoting you to a manager." What is missing, or what do they actually need to be doing themselves or asking the company for to get them to be set in a good place?
Some sort of I guess I start with, what's the corporate culture? So the
Okay.
spoken and unspoken, what is it? Do I understand it and my place in it as a leader? Because it is different when you are working with a team of folks rather than just responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, what are the boundaries, as it were, for the organization, right?
Okay.
And then what are my resources? So do we have some sort of leadership training? Even if
Mhm.
it's not with us, maybe it's an external something that we send people to. Do we have it? How soon do I get access to it? How is it paid for?
Yeah.
Um, Finding a good mentor. Again, I've had a couple of mentors in my career that, just really amazing, both the example, because they led by example, because people are watching us, even if we
They
think
are.
they should listen to what
They
we
are.
say. They're really watching what we do. And these were women who walked that talk of how they expected us to be was how they were. So finding a mentor can be a really powerful thing to help us succeed as a leader. And then thinking about, do I need some other external support? Do I want a coach to help me make sure I'm recognizing things as we move forward and that I am ready to deal with things as they come up? Um, so yes, what's this organization's philosophy, right, regarding how I'm supposed to be as a leader? What's the learning available to me? Do I have a mentor? And then do I need some other external support, right? Because it's hard. You can't even necessarily plan on, going home and speaking to a partner or a spouse about what's going
Yeah.
on in your workplace. Because if they haven't been leaders at the level that you've been a leader, they love you and that's great and they're there for you, but they can't speak to what you're going through. And that shouldn't, that's one of those boundaries, right? Where if we have the support in other places, we can just look to our partner for that healthy relational, emotional support and not like the deep dive into this really challenging situation with my team that I gotta like be in the weeds for a while and figure it out. If you don't have people in your immediate family or again, that partner who's done
Yeah.
that, they can't help you. They can't help you. They don't
Yeah.
know. And it's not, again, not speaking ill of our partners. They just don't know if they haven't been there. So finding that, and in this day and age too, there's so much virtually. Like we're, getting to chat today. There
Yeah.
are virtual groups out there, whether it's a Facebook group or, the I Google's our friend, and
Yes,
looking up
best.
like where's the group near me, whether it's in person or a virtual group, who are my people who are gone through this or are going through this that I can leverage to really help support me. So it doesn't even have to be like I get it, coaching is expensive, right? Especially
Yeah.
executive coaching. It's not free because I have to bring in all of us in this realm. We bring our decades of experience to the
Mhm.
table to help support our clients. So it can be pricey. At the very least, we need to find that support group. And if it's a virtual situation, that's still support for us as we figure out how we navigate the role.
And I mean, I think a lot of that when you're saying like you have to find your people, it's creating your personal board. Like those don't have to be your best friends and like those aren't always the girls you're going for martini nights with, but like
Mm,
it might be somebody in marketing because that's not your thing to understand more about how marketing works or finance or whatever, but you're supporting each other all in a really career kind of way to be able to help.
yes.
And it's like you're starting side hustles or, doing things like having that personal board who knows things is, like, super, super important.
Mm. Yeah, I would even go so far as to say it might not be your friends. Right?
Yeah.
Because your friends who love you that you've known for years, they always have your back, right? And they're
They're
gonna
like, "You're doing
support you
so
wherever
great. You're doing great." And I'm like, "But am I? But is this right? Like, should I do something different? Should I do more, less? Like, should I pivot?"
and they're like, "No, you're great." So, yes, and maybe you have a best friend who has experience in something and they can be on that board of resources for us, and in which case, then we're just very lucky, right? The universe has blessed us with a great resource who also happens to be a good friend. And I think that's a unique situation. I think there's a lot more leaders out there who have great friends. And that's
Yeah.
one of those places where it gets a little tough if our friend was our coworker and now they have to report to us, that friendship isn't the same anymore. It's
No.
it's not equal. There's a new power structure involved in it, and that's gonna take even more effort to navigate, but they absolutely are not it's absolutely understandable if they are not able to support us the way we need in this new role, right? It's not
Yeah.
actually fair to ask them to. So,
No, 1,000%. And I mean, when you're looking at leaders trying to come in either to new companies, new orgs, or just into leadership itself, how do you normalize them asking for help, for asking
mm.
for leadership coaches, or asking for mentorship programs or things like that?
In my experience, the best way is to I mean, it starts when we sign an offer letter, right? When we accept a role, we start talking about it. If we wait because it might be awkward or they might not have it, then we're chasing it the whole time. It is so much easier to set that expectation out of the gate that, hey, it's okay if you don't have it, and I'm going to look for it and you're going to help me get it, right? Then there's a
Yeah.
conversation to be had there with how is this organization going to support me if you don't offer it? But approaching it with that expectation of the norm should be that it's there. Right? That should be what we expect when we're in a new leadership role is that there is some kind of training and mentorship or coaching available. So if
Yeah.
it's not, okay, that's okay. Lots of places don't have it yet, as
Yeah.
we've already talked about today. So then how can I find it? And what's the budget for it? Or how is this organization going to support me to make sure? Because for me to be the best leader I can be, I need some more support. Which when I say that out loud, hopefully everybody's like, well, duh. Of course we need more support in a new role.
Or
That
else,
should
yeah,
be
how
the
else are you
norm.
gonna succeed? Like, how
Yeah,
will Like you need to have that kind of thing. And if you're in a small business or starting your own thing, it's having that personal board that you can go do, because if you're starting your own thing, it's only you. So therefore, there is no company to back you yet on training or anything like that.
Right, but you bring up a really good point, which is, like, when I started my own practice, having to recognize what my strengths were and where I had big gaps, and then did I wanna take the time to learn all that stuff to fill the gap, or is it appropriate to go to my board and say, "Hmm, do I have somebody? If not, I need to find somebody because I'm not that's not my wheelhouse."
Yeah, I don't
Could I
math, so somebody else does all
Yeah.
that for me.
Yeah. I struggle with marketing. I have a great marketing team because I realized that I really didn't enjoy it,
Yeah.
and I threw myself into trying to learn it and then stopped a minute and went, "Wait, I'm spending 40 hours a week learning marketing. I'm a coach. What I do well is coach. I need to be coaching." I There are other people whose specialty, whose wheelhouse, they're so good at it. I don't need to step on their toes. I just need to find them, right, and add them to my team.
1,000%. And when you're talking about teams here, I kind of want to pivot into, you said before in the beginning of the conversation that, you're doing one-on-ones, but you're also working with like leadership teams to kind of try to make them more aligned on, their culture, their retention, however they're working and things like that. So what makes a leadership team like actually effective? Like, what's the best things that they can be doing?
Mm, that's a great question. I think in my experience, it is setting a baseline that everybody understands and agrees to follow. Doesn't always have to be the same one, but having some basis of how do we treat our teams? Hopefully respectfully,
Yeah.
right? We want to have respect for the people on our teams. So hopefully setting those standards of this is how we talk to people, this is how we treat, this is the basics of what we would like our culture to be based on. And again, it doesn't have to be all sunshine and roses. I do myself like having a few commitments out there of how we're going to treat people because I think that
Yeah.
that's important to demonstrate that respect for our teams. And then the clear prioritization, how do we prioritize?
Yeah.
And what have we already prioritized? What is the focus? It's that idea of we all need to be going in the same direction, right? We had an intern once who was on the rowing team, and so we were constantly using, but it really was powerful to me to watch a video of the rowing team because they go really fast, right?
Yeah.
But
It's
the
a
only
lot of
reason they go
work.
really Yeah, but they go really fast in the same direction at the same time, right? And they have someone that they're willing to follow that person's guidance and count to move things forward. And that for me was just such a powerful metaphor. We have to be able to really all be pulling in that same direction to be, and I don't know, there was, makes me think there was a meme of two different, um, I think it was Chinese, but it might not have been, um, rope pull teams, the women's team and the men's team, and the women's team were won because they were synchronized, because they were
Yeah.
pulling in the same time in the same way, and it's that idea of we have to set that standard as a group, and again, it can be a formal training, which I have seen highly successful, but it can also just be one of the times when I was on a leadership team with we all knew we had a leader who was struggling a bit, but we got together and went, "Okay, like, here's all this information we have about what our priorities are based on what's been given to us. How are we going to make sure that we're moving together, that we are
Yeah.
all rowing in the same direction, that we're not stepping on each other's toes as well, right? Because sometimes there is some push and pull. You know, in healthcare, we always want beds to be full. And at the same time, we want case management to discharge people timely. So there's like a push and pull between the admissions folks and the discharge folks. Well, we still got to care for the patient in the bed. So let's, again, have a conversation. Let's continue to talk. Let's have some regular check ins. Very helpful
Yeah.
with whatever the team looks like to make sure that we're all still going in that same direction. And that will, I mean, honestly, I've seen it change entire departments, entire organizations when when we are finally all doing that, we're using similar verbiage when you talk to your team and I talk to mine, but we use the same kind of words, and then they go to the break room together and they've heard the same kind of words, right? Like it makes a difference. Gives us a little more credibility and authority in that situation
Yeah,
because
because
we're
you're all
together.
aligned together.
Right. And then like metrics get hit and efficiencies happen and employee retention happens because all of a sudden we're treating our employees what feels to them as fairly and equally, right? Because they're hearing the same words out of different leaders. It's such a powerful experience to get that really fantastic flow. So I'm sorry, I get
It's
excited
rare
about it.
too. You're good. Yeah, because it's
It
rare.
is.
Like,
Yeah.
that's a rare thing, even in like large, powerful corporations. It's a rare thing to have leadership all on the same page. And I mean, when we're looking at, those kind of, bigger companies or, big career moments, we were talking about our layoff experience because that was super fun. It was really great.
Really
I
great.
was laid off twice in a year, and you were laid off
Mhm.
later in life. And then
Mhm.
you pivoted into coaching. So, what did that transition teach you about resilience?
Ooh.
Because it's
I
hard. It's a grieving process. It's a breakup.
It is, because we go through life and we gather labels, right? And we put them on us, and it's partner and it's mother and it's daughter and it's student and it's leader and it's successful,
Yeah.
right? Because you get a nice job that pays well and you put that successful label on and you go, phew, okay, I'm good, right? We want to just continue on that way. And so, yeah, when a layoff happens, all of a sudden you have to start taking labels off and figuring out what that means to who you are underneath the labels.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I think it it reminded me that I am resilient, that I can make it through this, that people have been and are going through worse every day. And so
Mhm.
a little bit of perspective outside of myself in those moments, whether it's, you know, community wise, country-wise, globally, having a perspective of, gosh, there are worse things happening in the world right now, so I need to
Yeah.
not be quite so attached to that successful label, right? Or that professional label or that boss, leader label.
Well,
It's
know that
okay.
you're so much more. You're so much
Right.
more than your job.
Yeah, and having the time to reevaluate what is important to you, it's not something that I even with great therapy, always take the time to reflect on like, okay, is where I'm headed matching my morals and ethics? Is this where I feel in my heart? Or for people who are religious, what God intends for them, right? There are different ways to phrase that piece, but the bottom line is, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And is it in alignment with me, first of all? Um, and then I also had a really fantastic classmate, actually, in one of my certification classes, who was talking about like, you wouldn't have done this if you hadn't
Yeah,
had the
if you
layoff.
weren't.
Right, and
Yeah.
I thought, "Oh, wow, like, the universe really does make space for what you're supposed to be doing, and if you're not doing it, the universe is gonna make space a little harder until you take the space and you actually leverage it in the way that is in again, in alignment with who you are and the things that we can do to better the world around us." So, for me, that was that giving yourself a little grace too to
Yeah.
mourn because it is a big deal
Yeah,
and it
it's a
feels really
grieving
personal.
process. Mhm.
Right? Even when it's not, when an entire company shuts down, it's still we still gotta give ourselves a little bit of time and space with that to come to terms with it. But
Oh, no,
when we do,
1,000%.
and then we step back, look at all the cool things we can accomplish.
No, there's so much. I mean, and everybody kept saying when I go, they're like, something great's gonna come along. You just wait, it's gonna be better. You're like, you're gonna find your dream. And I was like, this was my dream job. Stop everybody making this like it's a pause. Let's just like be angry and sad right now and like know that I wasn't leaving until I was told and then I was told to. And it's not fun. Like, and it's not fun when you've got crappy management and like it could have been handled differently. And it all like it's just that feels personal. And then it just takes time to
Oh,
it's
yeah.
literally like a breakup. It takes time to get over. You have to go through all of the grieving processes. And then you're
Yeah.
finally in acceptance, and then you're just kinda numb to it.
Or not, right? Then we slide
Yeah.
back and we get angry again because something comes up from that, and we think
I
that
don't know.
still
They've
isn't
been
great.
doing mass layoffs still, and like every
Yeah,
time I see they did them last week, and every time I see somebody on LinkedIn just post and they say the nicest things about the company because it was like they're, you know what I mean? It
yeah,
was a great time during the times we were there, and like and about their coworkers and everything else. And I'm just like I feel this. I understand. Like I feel so sorry for you because it sucks. And like you will get through, but it sucks. And it's not like okay, like let's can't wait for the next adventure. And I'm like, yeah, mine wasn't like that.
yeah,
My mine was a furrowed. I didn't leave bed for a week and just cried and slept and was like, what am I supposed to do now? Who am I?
right. I think I panic applied to as many jobs as possible in that first week, and then had that moment of, "Okay, now who am I?" Right? Like,
Yeah,
who am I without that role and without that title? Again, we can fall into, a lot of ego that gets involved with who we are based on how we define ourselves, and a
yeah,
lot of times that's in relation to others, so it's about our work.
1000%. And I mean, and for the career girlies out there, like I get it. It's not you're not labeled mom or you're not labeled wife or whatever it might be, and you're like, this is my label.
Yeah,
Like so when you get your one big label taken away, like that's
right,
really hard.
right, it's floundering. It feels that was a word I used a lot
That's a
over the
great
summer,
word
as I
for it.
felt unmoored. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Totally different. What's one thing every woman in leadership needs to hear right now? Like, given everything that's going on in the world and like
mm,
the volatility of um, corporations and all the things.
I believe that our vulnerability is a superpower. I believe that when we are willing to take the risk to tell our teams, "I don't know, but I'll find out. I'm trying something new. I'm learning about this. I'm thinking differently about how I communicate, so we might have some pauses, and I don't want you to think I'm not listening. I'm giving my brain a moment because I want to respond in a way that supports you."
Mm.
Those things that being a little bit more transparent with our vulnerability is such a superpower because it does so many things for us. It gives our teams some of that insight into what we're going through. And again, I think that that transparency is huge in building teams where there's trust involved. It keeps our ego, right, a little less
Yeah,
engaged when
little
we're willing
bit.
to say, I'm not great at this yet, to people who have to report to us, who have to follow us and how we're going to lead them. And that example helps set it for our teams so that when they're in a place of growth or they're in a place of struggle and something isn't going great, they feel safe in saying either to the group or to you as their leader, this isn't great right now and I'm not sure what to do. Because the worst times I've ever seen and experienced as a leader, right? In my early days as a leader, I certainly did it sometimes as well where I was gonna be super tough and I wasn't ever gonna be vulnerable, and
Mhm.
then people wouldn't come to me with things. And then it gets so bad that we're looking at a termination when had I known 6 months ago that something was starting to brew, we could have addressed it completely differently.
Yeah.
And so I always felt a bit of responsibility for that because I
Mm.
didn't set up the situation in a way that they would feel safe in coming to me when things weren't good to say, "Hey, this isn't great, and I don't know how to fix it." So I think that when we can turn that on its head and lead again, it's great whatever you say as a leader, great stuff, sure, but if you're not walking that talk, it doesn't
Mm.
really matter what perfect, fun,
Yeah.
new things we can say because if we're not doing it, they're not gonna do it. So we can't just say this is a safe space and then never leverage that we need a safe space. We can never
Mm.
say, "Oh, we'll give you grace on that," without ever asking for a little bit of grace ourselves,
Yeah.
right? So I think that that's a sneaky superpower because I don't think it's it occurs to a lot of people and it's super uncomfortable. A lot of my clients would be like nodding in the car and they're
Yeah.
listening, like nodding at, I hated it when Jennylynde suggested this. and it has positive results. So when you can do that, when you can, again, model what you want to see in your team, which is if you have a vulnerable moment, you can share it here, and we're here to support you, and we'll work through it together if it's, a work-related thing. That's just so powerful. And, I've done it myself. I've seen other people do it. I've had clients come back and say, "I thought you were, talking crazy talk, but like this meeting went really well. My team seems to be a lot more engaged." Well,
No, I love that. No, that's such good advice. And as we're wrapping up, I have one question, a little bit around advice, but that I ask all my guests. But if you can give one piece of advice to your 16-year-old self, what would that be? Yeah, just different lady,
uh, right? She was a child. She didn't know she was a child, but ooh, she was a
right? Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
I I would say don't get too attached to your plans,
It's good advice,
'cause
though.
right? Because looking back on what I thought my life was gonna be like when I was 16, right? Not even close to where I ended up, and it's okay, I still love the life I have and all the experiences I've had since then, even though, again, shedding those preemptive labels I had put on myself,
Yeah.
right, was hard. It was hard because I'd gotten really attached to that perceived plan and identity, and at 16, you don't know what you don't know. So, I
Exactly.
would say maybe just be a little more open to what comes in front of you for a reason, and it's not devastating. It doesn't have to be devastating. It's still gonna end up to be great in the end.
I love that. But it's such good advice, though.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to put this in the show notes, but tell everybody where we can find you and where they can find your amazing coaching programs and how to get a hold of you.
Absolutely. So I am couragecoaching.us because there is a courage coaching in the UK and that's not me. So the best way I do a complimentary coaching session with folks who think they want to work with me because frankly, I think you should know how a coach works before
Yeah,
you're going to pay them
absolutely.
money. So I like to offer that complimentary session. I don't call it free because as you can tell from our conversations, there's a little work involved for my clients. They have to, be ready to work on some stuff and address it. But yeah, so
Yeah,
you can find those at book.couragecoaching.us. So just
perfect. Yeah,
BOK.couragecoaching.us. And then complimentary session. And then people decide after that if they want to continue to work with me. And then those packages are available on couragecoaching.us on my website.
perfect. Well, everybody, I think if you're in your career or starting out at your career, whatever level, like this can only be so helpful. Like there's only positives that could come out of it. So thank you so much, Jennylynde. I appreciate it. And
Thanks, Rachel.
everyone, we're going to see you next week. Thank you.